Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Just being stupid. Bored, probably like a lot of you are. How's things? Good, I hope. Yeah, like I said, things going all right here. Just bored. Was trying to get stuff done. Had some really good wings today. You can probably maybe see a little bit of the sauce left in my beard here. Fantastic wings from Geno's in Livingston. So if you get a chance, they take out obviously. No, I went in with my mask and my gloves and played it safe, sterilized and all that stuff. Anyway, going to deal with Lord of the Flies, chapter 4 today. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to start just making these. I'm not going to do them every couple days. I'm just going to make a bunch. I'm just going to stick them all up online with whatever I want you to do with them. You do it whenever you get a chance. Hopefully, it'd be best, obviously, if you get stuff finished before the test. There's probably going to maybe, I'm going to try to cut back on what I'm asking you to do with that, because I do, and I keep saying I'm going to, but we need to, I do want to do a few time rights. You saw just my remind just a minute ago where I said that I was going to cut back on, it's just going to give full credit on the last one we did, because I can't really, I grade it. I can't get it back to you to rewrite or fix or anything. So do some online stuff. Anyway, let me turn this down. By the way, I'm listening to this wonderful band, fantastic band called Stonefield. It's a newer band, last couple of years. It's 4 sisters that grew up in the middle of nowhere in Australia. And it's kind of a acid rock from the 70s, and they absolutely kill it. So I've been listening to them during lockdown. Anyway, I'll give you a little watch. Listen to this voice. Her voice is amazing. She's a drummer. Put speaker on this. It's pretty good stuff. Then get to the chorus. Anyway, the band's called Stonefield, all one word. That song's called Blackwater Rising. Absolutely amazing band. Several albums. The first few, all of them are all fantastic. But anyway, let's get to chapter 4, shall we? I'll stop wasting your time. I know some of you are very, very busy, and some of the teachers are putting out a little more work than they should be, if that is happening, You can always bring it up and see what we can, maybe tell folks to back off a little bit. But anyway, so we're going to deal with chapter 4. Again, I'm not going to read it to you. I'm going to change this music because it is distracting, because it's so awesome. I won't be able to pay attention. So I'll put on some Kiss, which is, I've heard it a million times, so it's not going to distract me. All right, so let's get to chapter 4. So chapter 4. Let me get to my annotations here. Get my pen here so I can make some marks. All right. All right, so I am looking, nevertheless. In this chapter, again, they're still trying to figure it out. And this is really, you saw a split happen in the last chapter. And this really is where the split between Jack and Ralph becomes, for the most part, permanent. And here we get to see that the smaller boys, get that term, little uns. I brought it up in the last couple of questions. I should have waited, but that's what they're called. And, they do rely on the other boys. They pick the fruit that's lowest and it's bad. So they're getting diarrhea. They're having nightmares, and if you were looking at the creation of a society, these are the regular citizens, right? These are the ones who, eat poorly and don't know any better for their own health. They're panicked about everything. It's actually a really interesting concept to look at with what's going on today. And then apart from food and sleep, they found time for play, aimless, trivial, the white sand. And instead of, they cried for their mothers much less than expected. They're playing. And they also obeyed, the conch shell. They obeyed authority. At this point, they're obeying authority. We get this here, which is very much important for the foreshadowing. The little boys are playing. Henry, again, it always seems like unless you're like at the very bottom, everybody's looking at whoever's above them as a leader. Everybody, as humans, it seems like it's innate inside of us to want somebody to lead us. Especially again, somebody like these little kids. Roger and Maurice come out, and now this little boy here, Roger especially, is very important. And they walk through, and what do? First thing, they walk straight through the sandcastles, the boys kicking everything over that these boys. Again, this is an exertion of power. And this is also something that Golding's talking about here, the innate need to exert your power over somebody weaker. Even the little boys were playing, you'll see that they're playing with these little crab creatures, and they're exerting their power over something smaller than them. And then you have Roger and Maurice exerting their power, and so on until eventually you get to like Jack and his situation. And then you get these boys kind of wandering off, and then you get this weirdo, Roger. Roger remained watching, this little stalker. And then when Henry walks off by himself, Roger followed. He's just kind of watching him off to the side. And what you have with Roger, and again, some of you have read this, Roger is kind of like in real life, he probably would have grown up to be a serial killer, or he would have grown up to be, possibly a great politician. But Roger's got something dark inside of him. Roger, Jack is a bad leader, and Jack is really our antagonist here. And Jack is, the guy that is obviously the guy that Ralph is butting up against. Roger is the real symbol of darkness on this island. Here's when he was playing the creatures. This is when Henry's exerting his power over these little creatures. He poked him with a stick, again, exerting power. And then we get to where Roger starts throwing rocks. He gathered a handful of stones, began to throw them. And yet there was a space around Henry, perhaps 6 yards in diameter, in which he dare not throw. This is big here. The invisible yet strong was the taboo of the old life. I'm basically crossing everything out here. I apologize. I can go back. Undo that. Undo that. Yes, the taboo of the old life. The around the squatting child was the protection of parents. You grow up in school and policemen. We grow up with that, and importantly, the law. His arm was conditioned by civilization that knew nothing of him, was in ruins. And so what's keeping Roger from hitting this little boy with rocks? The only thing that's keeping him from doing it is the fear of what would the repercussions. Now this becomes a deal because if we remember at the beginning when Jack said, well, we're gonna have rules, and then they're talking about hitting people, and then and to us that seemed barbaric. But yet, okay, so then what happens? What do you do when somebody like Roger starts to think about starting hitting people with rocks? Now, what do you do to somebody like this? Now, what the issue is, what happens when Roger realizes there are no repercussions for his actions? And then he's going to start seeing that in this chapter. We've got, Jack coming in, and this is now that a lot of stuff happening here. And they put this makeup on their face, right? They put this charcoal from the fire and clay and this red color, and they cover their faces. They put it as a mask because they're doing it so they make better hunters, right? So to mask their appearance, so that they could sneak up on the pigs. But there is, let me get to that quote that I wanted to mark down. we're hunting. Where is it? And where is my quote that I'm looking for? I'm sorry, I got them. Here it is. Yeah, dazzle paint, like trying to look like something else, which this is. Now they're covered. He knelt, holding the shell of water. He looked in astonishment, no longer at himself, but an awesome stranger. He spilt the water, leapt to his feet, decided to pull his sinewy body, held up a mask that drew their eyes and appalled them. He began to dance, and his laughter became a bloodthirsty snarling. He capered toward Bill, and the mask was a thing on its own. So now what we've got here is behind which Jack led, liberated from shame and self-consciousness. This is huge, because now that they put these masks on themselves, interestingly enough, I'm listening to Kiss right now, and that was one of the things that these guys talked about. Putting this makeup on their faces liberated them. They became different people when they put this makeup on their face and go on stage. And they talked about how like there was an immediate transformation, that when they put this makeup on it, they became this character. They became somebody else. And whatever it is they did on stage, they didn't feel like they weren't embarrassed by it. It wasn't them. It was the character that they were putting on. And so what you have here is they put on these masks, they put on this face paint to hide themselves so they can hunt. But what it does is it gives them any sort of lack of responsibility. They're free from responsibility now for their actions, because in their mind, whatever's being done now that they've got these masks on. Think about, when you dress up for Halloween and kind of the goofy stuff that you do when you put on masks, or, put on face paint, or whatever it is that you do. Think about the kids, even when you dress up for Spirit Days, think about those Fridays. I mean, so sad to think about. But you think about those Spirit Days, and kids color their faces up red and white and wear all the goofy costumes and the crowns and the capes and all of that, and how over the top they would act when they wouldn't do that on a normal day. And so this is very important and very scary, because now these boys, especially the hunters, have unconsciously given themselves a release from responsibility, and that absolutely is not going to work itself out. So I am going to and then we get to Piggy. They're going down to Piggy War, and Piggy still, he was the only boy on the island whose hair never seemed to grow. Again, civilization. You think about that idea of being civilized and how important haircuts are. And we realize how important haircuts are now that we can't get one. But you think about, people call somebody a long-haired hippie, and young boys especially, supposed to keep their hair, the thought of they're supposed to keep their hair short and trimmed. And the other boy's hair, and Goldie will talk about it, the hair grows. And they talked to you at the beginning of this chapter about Roger's hair being longer. And everybody's hair is growing, except for Piggy, because that civilization, he represents that civilization, and intelligence, but it's civilization in this case. And that's not, again, it's not going away with him. So he's really becomes kind of the last person that's able to hang on to this. All right, so we get to what am I looking at here? I'm trying to find Piggy. Sorry, it's hard to match up what I got with what you got. Ralph turned and smiled at him. About Piggy was a bore, right? Ralph doesn't like him. His fat, his asthma, his matter-of-fact ideas were dull, but there was always a little pleasure to go about pulling his leg, even if one did it by accident. This is a rejection. I'm going to do this. Boom, boom. Rejection of. This is a rejection of intelligence. Is what this is. That's a C. Piggy saw the smile and interpreted it as friendliness. There had grown up tactily among the Biggins the opinion that Piggy was an outsider. See, all the boys are rejecting Piggy. Not only by accident, which did not matter, but by fat and asthma and specs and a certain disinclination for manual labor. Yeah, Piggy, being who he is, he doesn't like to work. He comes up with the ideas. He's the idea guy. All right. So again, they're rejecting intelligence at this point. All right, let me get to this. All right, so what we get is, then we get that whole situation with the fire, right? And the fire is not going, and there's a ship. They could have been saved. I mean, 100%. There's a ship out there. If there was a fire with smoke, that would have been, that would have been a big deal. But instead, the boys that were supposed to be watching it are off hunting. And when they come back, they've got a pig finally, and then you get this chant that starts to pop up. Kill the pig, cut her throat, spill her blood. Simon recognizes, as he being the guy that he is, that something's wrong, and he recognizes that this is bad. What these boys, this group of boys, these hunters, remember they were a choir, and then you get this confrontation between Jack and Ralph, and what you've got is, again, you've got a power struggle. And Jack wanted to be in charge the entire time. Ralph was voted in instead, and so Jack is doing everything he can to try to wrestle power away from Jack. Jack is doing everything he can to wrestle power away from Ralph. We get this, where they're telling the story about what happened. Ralph says, "You let the fire go out." Jack checked, vaguely irritated by this irrelevance. And at this point, Jack is choosing power because he wants power. This idea of getting meat for them, he's convinced them that they need meat. And the way that he's made them feel that this is something that they have to have. And plus, remember that, but besides him offering meat, is by him killing a pig, he's also showing the younger boys that he is able to kill, and he's showing that his hunters are able to kill, which it makes them feel protected, right? It makes them feel protected. But it also shows you that he's choosing, power over survival, like power over survival. And this idea of exactly what, if you think about the way that even, you look at what's happening here with this, in this situation, you've got like a democracy it was initially a democracy. They voted and they thought they would do it. And it's turning into a dictatorship. In the idea of those people that are in power who are willing to destroy things just in order to continue to try to stay in power, that they will destroy everything that's below them just in order to be able to try to stay on top. That if they're not able to be the top of whatever, they'd rather be at the top of a heap of ashes than to be at the bottom of a gold pyramid. They absolutely would need to be on top. And what you see with Jack is his need for power overwhelms, and especially, and then Ralph gets into this as well, is that they allow their egos to get the best of them. And they allow their egos to take control of, to, instead of thinking in terms of what's right for the other boys and what's right for themselves and what's right for survival, they're worried about power. Both of them, Jack or Ralph gets caught up into it as well. And you think about our country, you think about, Democrats versus Republicans, and neither side is really thinking, oh, this is what's best for the country. This is what's best for their party, and this is what's best for them to stay in control. This is what's best. Why won't somebody come out and just say this is exactly what's happening? Why won't one of them, come out and tell the truth? Because if they do, then they lose their seat and they lose their place at the table, right? They don't get to be the pig at the trough, eating from that trough of power that they absolutely love. Even the ones that you think have the best in mind. There's no reason that somebody like again, both sides problems, but somebody like Bernie Sanders, who everybody loves, and he's for the people. Bernie Sanders is a millionaire. He's got a few $1 million in the bank. How does somebody who works for the government and gets paid, $100,000, $150,000 a year, he gets paid like as much as a high school principal? How is Bernie Sanders a millionaire? What did he do over these? How is he just really good with money, or is it because he's done some things in order to make himself, he stays on power and he's got a lot of money? So there's questions. So you get this, again, this power struggle here. You let the fire go out, they go back and forth. It's only been out for an hour or two. Then he brings up the idea that, to get that there was a boat. And he says, you should have seen the blood. And again, we start to really know that that Jack's got problems, right? Well, all the boys have problems because Jack is like this, but Jack is gaining control. And then he brings up that there was a ship. And at that point, boom, he throws down a trump card on Jack. And you let the fire go out. They might have seen us. You and your blood. And at this point, Ralph pushed Piggy to one side, again, pushing aside that intelligence, right? And he's not thinking in terms of, at this point, okay, it's gone out. At this point, he should be trying to figure out, okay, this is what we're going to do next. Instead of just harping on it. It's like you accused him. He knows that what he did was wrong. Move on. But instead, he keeps pushing and pushing. And what he does is he causes Jack to need to defend his own ego. He needs to. So instead of trying to do something like, this would have been a big win for Ralph if he just said, look, you did this, which was wrong. Jack realizes he did something wrong. And then he's like, okay, this is what we're going to do next time. Instead, he again pushes aside his intelligence. I was chief and you were going to do what I said. You talk. And then he starts to whine. And you can't be a leader if you're going to whine. And then they start talking about the shelters, and then this, boom, and this, we needed meat, and they don't, but he has convinced them that they do. He's absolutely convinced them that they have to have that. The two boys faced each other. There was the brilliant world of hunting, tactics, fierce, blah, 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 blah. Jack transformed the knife to his left hand, and then he picks up he's got this thing, this weapon that gives him power. Ralph has the conch shell. And that is, that's pretend power. That's power that's given to you because you've been taught, kind of like as a teacher. I have power in the classroom. I'm like, well, I can do, I can suspend somebody or I can send them out of class, or a parent can grant. But I mean, in reality, a lot of what teachers, it's a lot of pretend. Now, police officers, because they have weapons, they have real authority. The military has real authority. There's certain people, politicians, it's kind of fake authority. They don't really have, you have authority because of their position and because we have decided that those people have authority. Well, Ralph is a pretend authority guy and Jack is not. Ralph has a conch shell, which is going to do him a lot of good in a conflict, and Jack has a knife, which will do him a lot of good. And then drove Jack to the bolting look came to his eyes. He took a step and able to at last to hit someone. Next question: why was he finally able to at last? One, because he has the makeup on his face. Two, because he realizes Ralph has no power. He realizes Ralph can't do anything, and he hits Piggy. The ultimate rejection of intelligence, but also a show of violence, and nothing happens. Ralph made a step forward and Jack smacked Piggy's Piggy's glass, and this is where Piggy's glasses break. That's a big deal as well. Now, we'll talk about that at a different time. But this here is when you got to think of all the other boys. This is why as a teacher, and I hate to say it this way, but as a teacher, when there's some sort of a situation goes on in class, I have to win. I have to. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm not talking about a situation like that. But if there's a conflict with a student, an argument, something, the teacher, you have to come out on top, because if you show that you lose, then that shows other kids, especially if you're talking, I'm not talking about, kids like you guys are, even then, a few of you were a little, shaky at the beginning of the year. But, especially if you have like freshmen, I mean, you think about these kids and you think about the freshmen, and you show some weakness and they will eat you alive. Absolutely. You've had class, you've got teachers who they just can't control their classes. They've allowed students to win battle after battle after battle. And then once that happens, all the other students decide to start picking battles. And it just becomes a nightmare. It becomes a Lord of the Flies situation. So once he does this and he hits Piggy and nobody does anything about it, and all the other boys saw it, and now it's done. And you got somebody like Roger who's sitting off in the side, watching this and thinking, wow, I just wasn't hitting the kid with a rock because I was afraid of what would happen. And yet here Jack gets to sock somebody and nothing happens. All right, so Piggy grabbed and put on he looked malevolently at Jack. I got specs and his glasses are broken. Let me see here. All right, so Piggy and the parody were so funny. I'm here. Jack felt encouraged. He went on scrambling, see? And here, Jack felt encouraged. And that is, again, dangerous He went on scrambling, and the laughter rose. Unwillingly, Ralph felt his lips twitch. He was angry with himself for giving way. He allowed all this to happen, and he knows that he screwed up. Um, and now he decides he's going to do something, but it's kind of too late. Let's see here. I'll bring him back. Okay, and then this. I apologize for Jack apologizes, and this is kind of the end of it, right? He apologized, but the power shifted, and Ralph knows it. Even though Jack apologizes, because now he's coming out like the good guy, because all the kids are like thinking that he did the decent thing. Ralph knows he's got to do something to try to get this back. All right, I'll light the fire. And when they're talking about Ralph went to Piggy and took the glasses from him, they're going to light the fire back up. Not even Ralph knew a link between him and Jack had been snapped and fastened elsewhere. I'll bring him back. I'll come to. Piggy stood behind him. And now what you get is Ralph kind of starts to realize, like, the one person that's always kind of got his back is Piggy. And now you've got Ralph embracing intelligence. And now he starts to look at things differently, starts to look at things with more intelligence, listens to Piggy. Problem is, it's too late. It's too late. He should have been doing this from day one. Instead, he waited and waited and waited until he allowed Jack to get out of control. He allowed the other boys to see the weakness in his authority. And it just, at this point, it just begins to fall apart. Let's see. And then we get to this, and this makes it even worse. When Jack takes the meat and cooks it, and what does Ralph do? He meant to refuse it, but his past diet of fruits, nuts, blah, blah, blah. He accepted a piece and he gnawed it like a wolf. See, and this, it's like you can't be mad at somebody for stealing $20 from somebody. Like, if you're a parent and your kid goes and steals money and you're like, you know what, I'm super mad at you, but can I borrow $10? Like, you can't do that. It's either you're either mad about it or you're not. You either reject the entire action or you don't. And so this of him taking this meat, where he's trying to tell the boys, you don't need meat. We need this. And then he offers the meat and he takes it. Piggy doesn't get any. Jack completely refusing to accept intelligence at all. So Simon, being Simon, gives him his, again, Christ figure, right? Eat it, damn you. He glared at Simon. Take it. And he gives, I got you meat. Right? And this is the big thing here that makes, and it makes them feel like this is the number one thing. Like, oh my God, I got you meat. Think about politicians that have given like a promise, and they make you feel like that's the number one thing. It's like, well, I'm going to do this. And it's like, well, there's a million things that need to be done. Why is this the thing that we're all incredibly concerned with? And so where did you find they were there by the sea. Let's see here. And then you got Ralph refusing to move while they're doing what they're doing, right? And in a way, he gets some of that power back. Ralph watched them, envious and resentful. Not till they flagged in the chant and died did he speak. I'm calling an assembly. And then we get into that with the conch, and he's going to call this. And you're just watching this entire thing fall apart, just absolutely fall apart. So I don't have questions up yet, but I do have this video, so I'm going to post this. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to put it on YouTube anymore, because I got a few videos banned from YouTube, especially my I used an audio for a book for the freshmen and blah, blah, blah. And I got a couple things banned, so I'm not going to put things on there. I'm just going to directly put these on the Classroom. Obviously, you'll find that out because you won't be able to watch this unless you have done that already. So like I said, I'm just going to start putting stuff up on Classroom. All right. Well, I'll post the questions. I'll put a few things, though. I'm not going to make a lot of questions for this, just a couple of small things you can do and get you some points. And, like I said, we're building grades right now, right? We're building grades. You've probably heard all the stuff about grades and all that and how that's working out. So right now we're just building. So those of you that are trying to get from one grade to another grade, this is perfect opportunity for you. And, obviously still using this as a preparation way to prepare for the test. So Anyway, then I'll post some questions. I'm going to do chapter 5. I don't know if I'll do chapter 5 today, but I'm going to do it probably in the morning. Maybe number 6 tomorrow at 7. I'm just going to start putting them up. And like I said, you do them when you get a chance. Not any, like this doesn't have to be due tomorrow or anything, but obviously I'd like you to get them done. Excuse me. Don't mean to burp one. I don't want you to feel rushed, but I would like you to get them done. I'd like to be able to put them into grades. That'd be awesome. I'd like to get them, obviously done before the AP test, because doing half the book before the AP test is going to be silly, because then you wouldn't be able to. Let me take that back. You're not going to be able to use this in the AP test anyway, because the AP test isn't testing novels. So this is just us reading and analyzing and getting used to reading and analyzing, used to reading and analyzing, reading and analyzing. So it's just practice, but also points, and also, reading a great book, and also learning some great stuff, and getting to see my handsome face, and, earning points, getting a grade up. So anyway, I'm going to stop talking, and I will see you on the next chapter. Yeah. All right.